So this is my second time trying to film this video because the first time I filmed it in slow-mo. Let's put a clip. Hello and welcome to my February reading wrap-up, where I'm going to be sharing all of the wonderful books I read in this wonderful month of February. Yeah, it was wonderful. It was great. Don't ask any follow-up questions. Just a little mental health check at the top of the video. February wasn't a great month for me. It wasn't. I'm not enjoying being unemployed as much as I was in January. It's not as fun and funky fresh when it's been a month and a half that you haven't worked. But the good news is we'll be working again in March, so whoop whoop. Also, I live in Canada, so the winter will never end. Even if the groundhog says it will, it's never gonna end. This wasn't a super prolific month of reading for me. I actually only read 6 books, so this hopefully won't be too long of a video, but you know, I could talk about anything for hours, so let's just get into it. So the first book I read this month was Insurgent, which is the second in the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. I actually also read Allegiant, so I figure I'll just wrap those two up here. I'm trying to reread all of the dystopian books from like the 2010s for a video. And if it weren't for a video, I wouldn't have continued reading Divergent, but here I am. Content. Divergent is the best of the series, and it's kind of all downhill from there. From my memory, reading this as like a teen, you know, in my dystopian era, I enjoyed Insurgent and Allegiant was poopy. But guess what? Insurgent is also bad. So that's fun to find out. Insurgent follows like right after the first book when there's been, you know, the mass killing. Yeah, that one. It goes from there, and we go around the city of Chicago, going to all the other factions and meeting them, and Triss getting shot at and running away, and other people getting killed, and Triss running away. And then the last book, Allegiant. If you don't know what happens in the Divergent series, I'm going to spoil it for you here. If you don't want that, skip ahead to the next book. You'll see the little font change. Yeah, so Allegiant is when they leave the city and find out that they are part of a fun genetic experiment. Hooray! Allegiant was better than I remembered it being. Because I saw how like Insurgent was just like, girl, what are we doing? At least in Allegiant we have a change of view. But I think the thing I really didn't like about these two books is like there's minor setups for like the plots of the next two books in the first, like in the prior books, but Triss Prior? There's minor setups for these things, but like not enough. It just kind of feels like each book it's like, okay, who's the new girl boss that is going to commit a war crime to set off the plot of this book? And it's a new woman every time. And I will say, this book passes the Bechdel test because there's a lot of women who are war criminals. So they're talking about murder, killing, all that fun stuff. Overall, I would not suggest you reread the Divergent series or read it for the first time if you haven't and you're interested in the plot. Just read a plot summary. It'll save you a lot of time because these are actually really long books. They are 500 pages each. I will share more of my thoughts overall in that like dystopian video that I'm hoping I can film like this month or next month. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, overall, I think both of these are like a 2.5 for me. It's just, God, they're not as good as Hunger Games, are they? The next book I read, and this is a bit more positive, this next book I read was Siege and Storm, which is the second in the Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo. And I liked this book a lot more than the first one, which is great, because if you watch my January reading wrap-up, you would know that I had a lot of beef with the first one, and I didn't like it. But this book I enjoyed a lot more. I think the main couple reasons that I enjoyed this book a lot more than the first one was like I already understood the world a little bit more. The beginning of the first book, I was so confused for a long time. Even now, I don't know what's going on. But I had a bit more of like background, so I understood a bit more. Another reason is this book, the pace was a lot slower. The first book felt like I was being waterboarded by information. And then this one, not so much. Also, I'm not a huge fan of the main characters that are introduced in the first book. You know, like our main girly and the guy, those ones. But I do like the new character, like the new main character that's introduced in this book, which is a pirate man. love a pirate tale, so love that when we were on a boat and flying and stuff, that was fun. He also sticks around for the rest of the book, so I'm hoping he's in the third one because it's kind of questionable at the end of the second book whether he's going to be around. I'm hoping that he doesn't A, turn evil, and B, this finger's A by the way, this is B, or B, die, because that wouldn't be fun. Overall, I liked this book a lot more and I'm excited for the third book. I have it on hold, so I guess that'll be a March tale for you all, whether I like that book or not. The next book I read was another sequel, and it was Bloodmarked, which is the sequel to Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. And I really, really enjoyed this one. I think it was just as good as the first one, which is always great. So this book follows our main character, Bree, who at the end of Legendborn finds out that she is the heir to the Arthur knighthood. So she's gonna have Arthur's soul go in her and make her a really good fighter, which is weird to say out of context. If you haven't read the book, it's weird, but it's cool because that means she's gonna be the strongest and the boss. She's the king. That's cool. But what I really liked about this book is I felt like we were really settled into the characters, and I think that's a testament to the character building done in the first book and the world building as well. Like, it just, everything made sense. I wasn't confused at any point in the book, which was good. And also the characters that are included in this book are my faves. It's the MVPs of the first book, and all of the fat is kind of cut out. In the first book, we meet a lot of people that are included in like this knighthood, because so there's like, I think there's probably about like 6 knights of the round table at this club that she's in, this group, I forget, society, I don't remember. And then they each have a squire, so that's another 6 people. And then there's the pages, and that's like another like 10 people. So there's like so many characters. And then in the second book, it's whittled down to like my faves, and my boy Selwyn's there. Love that. Another thing I liked about this book was that Nick wasn't there. Don't like Nick. He's not my favorite. I'm a Selwyn stan. The characters that are included in this book are like the most interesting ones that I actually care about, so that was good. Loved that. And I feel like this book also follows through on a lot of the things that were set up in the first book. In the first book, we're introduced to like kind of multiple different magic systems, and then in this book we explore more of the root system that's introduced, which is something that Bree has access to, and it's outside of like Arthur and all that fun stuff. So it was really interesting to explore that side of the world. And overall, I just think this was a great sequel. It kind of like ties up the loose ends from the first book, but then also leaves enough there so that like I'm excited for the third book, which I'm hoping is a thing that's going to happen, because I don't know. But I'm hoping there's a third book because it was good. Both of the books in the Legendborn cycle have been like a 4.5 for me, which is a pretty good rating. The next book I read is a questionable book. I don't really understand why I thought it was a good idea to read it, but it is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I thought this book would be more up my alley based on the TV show. I've actually never seen the TV show, but I wanted to watch it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll give the book a try first, and then I'll then I'll watch the TV show. I think I should have just stuck with the show, because that's the one that has Taylor Swift songs in it. The book doesn't have Taylor Swift in it. So which one am I going to prefer? Obviously Taylor Swift. I think this book was never going to be for me. It's a little bit younger than the typical YA I like to read. It's kind of more like middle grade YA, but if I had read this in like grade 6 or 7, I would have ate it up. So the premise is our girl Belly is going to visit her like family friend's beach house that she goes to every summer, and there's 2 cute boys there, and she's in a little bit of like a kind of like a love square, really. She's in a love square. All the boys want her. Yeah, I feel like this book was never going to be for me. There's nothing really wrong with it. It was kind of boring for me. A little bit boring. The interesting things that I saw in the show never actually happened. Like, she never has like her debutante where they dance. I want to see that. So our main love triangle is between Belly and the 2 older boys. Like, they're kind of raised as like cousins. And the older one's named Conrad and the younger one's named Jeremiah. I think I wasn't super invested in the love triangle because I didn't think both of them were good options. One being the older one is 18 years old, so he shouldn't really want to date a 15-year-old. That feels icky to me. And then the younger one I think is like 16 or 17, and he's nice to her, like consistently. So it's like, why do you want to date the mean one? He's too old. Yeah, again, not for me. But if you liked it as a child or you are a child, then read it. Hope you enjoy. The last book that I read I actually have physically, and that is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, and I really enjoyed this one. This is a sequel to Ninth House, which is Leigh Bardugo's like adult dark academia fantasy series, and Ninth House was a little confusing for me. I read it as an audiobook, which I don't think was the best idea, so I found it a little hard to follow, but this one I found a lot more cohesive and had a lot less subplots that were confusing. So I really enjoyed this. But yeah, I feel like because I had like the background knowledge of reading the first one, it made this book more enjoyable for me. And I think I also enjoyed the characters a little bit more in this one. When I first read Ninth House, I wasn't the biggest fan of our main character, Alex. And maybe that's a little bit due to the fact that I read it as an audiobook and I wasn't paying full attention, and I was just like, she's complaining a lot. But also in this book, we know a lot more about her than we did in the first book. Like, it's her history and past is kind of like revealed to us in bits and pieces. Whereas here, we know her trauma, so you give her a little bit more leeway for like the stupid things that she does. But yeah, so the world of Ninth House is that Alex works for a society called Lethe, which overlooks all of the other secret societies at Yale University, and they're kind of like the protectors of like the world and make sure the magic doesn't spill out and make sure that like all the people not involved with societies stay safe. So in this world, all of the secret societies have their own like sort of magic that they do that makes them like famous and bring in money. So Lethe is kind of like the police of all of them. This book felt a lot tighter than Ninth House. Like, Ninth House was a lot of different things going on, a lot more mystery involved, and like by the end I was like, what the heck is going on? I did have that at some points in this book, but no, it wasn't like my overall takeaway. My overall takeaway of Ninth House was like, I don't really know what I read, but I think I liked it. But reading Hellbent, I was like, I know what I read and I enjoyed it. Because this one is directly following the plot set up by the first book, which is that our main guy, Darlington, he gets sucked up, eaten by a hell beast and is in hell. So we gotta go get him. So the first book, they can't really even try to get him out of hell because so much other stuff is going on that they need to solve. But this book is mostly focused on getting Darlington out of hell, and it's fun. It's also a little bit lighter than the first one because there's not as much trauma, I find. Even though they go to hell multiple times, we're not unpacking, you know, Alex's like really dark past or, you know, the horrible things that the societies do. It's more so just like, you know, the horrible things that demons do, which is understandable. And it doesn't happen in real life, so it's a little easier to digest. I really enjoyed this book, and reading this and Shadow and Bone in the same month, well, I guess the sequel, whatever, but reading both of these series by Leigh Bardugo, it was really weird to think they were written by the same author because they are so completely different, like tonally, and just even like the writing style. Like, I wouldn't know they were the same person. These two books were published like 10 years apart, and you can really see her growth over those 10 years in writing, so that was really cool. So yeah, that was February in reading. It was a month and it is over. Well, I'm filming this on the 28th, so who knows? It might not be done. I might wake up tomorrow and it's Groundhog Day. Oh God. February, not the best month, but it is over now and we can look back at it and go, good riddance, goodbye, see ya, and just hope that March is a better month. In terms of reading, this month was probably too much fantasy. So I'm hoping that next month I'm not going to be reading as many fantasy. This month, a lot of it was like holds coming up that I wasn't expecting to all come up at once. So I just kind of had to like read them all from the library. So this month, I don't have any holds waiting for me. So it's hopefully going to be less fantasy. The one book I do know I'm reading is Twilight, which is a fantasy. But this month I will be filming my first read of Twilight, which is very exciting. So you can subscribe if you want to see that. If you're new to the channel, I put out videos. I try to do videos once a week. If you enjoyed, like I said, subscribe, give it a like. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing March. Bye!